Sir, we are live now. Good afternoon, everyone.
Namaste. A very warm welcome to the DOT TSDSI Webinar series on IoT M2M applications for verticals webinar on health. I, Sonia Sachdeva Sharma, along with my colleagues from TSDSI, Ms. Bindu Srivastava, Ms. Shifali Sinha, Mr. Asif Iqbal, and from DOT, Mr. Ajay Nain, are your hosts for this webinar. Before we begin, here are a few hygiene announcements. All attendees will be muted throughout the workshop. If you have any questions for the speakers, please type them in the questions tab. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the TSDSI website within the next few days. A few material is available in the handouts tab at the dashboard of the tool. Participants may like to download these for their reference. Speakers are requested to kindly deliver their presentations within the allotted time durations. This is the third webinar in the series and it will focus on the health segment. We have the distinguished honor to have all the speakers with us today. Shri A.K. Tiwari, Member T, DOT, Shri Deen Dayal Toshniwal, DDG, NT, DOT, Shri Manish Saxena, Director, NT, DOT, Professor Arzad Alam Khairani, Chair, SGSS Working Group 2, TSDSI, Professor Harish Kumar, UIET, Punjab University, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Associate Professor, NIHFW, Dr. Tapritesh Sethi, Associate Professor, IIIT Delhi, Mr. Vishnu MS, Co-founder and CEO, eBlabs Technologies Private Limited, Dr. Zainal Charbiwala, Co-founder and CTO, Tricog Health, Mr. Manish Khare, COO, Sensorize. Thank you everyone for joining the third session of the webinar. Our global speaker, Dr. Nada Philip, has suddenly fallen ill and therefore she'll not be able to participate in the webinar. Apologies for the same. Now I invite Shri Deen Dayal Toshniwal, DDG, Networks and Technologies, DOT, Government of India, to give the opening remarks for the webinar. Shri Deen Dayal Toshniwal is an Indian Telecom Service Officer of 1990 batch. He has done BE, Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering from Assam Engineering College, Guwahati, MBA Marketing from BK School of Management, Ahmedabad, and PGD in Public Policy and Management from MDI, Gurgaon. He has extensive experience in various telecom domains, including wireline and wireless networks. Currently, he is posted at DOT headquarters since October 21 as DDG Networks and Technologies. Sir, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Sonia ji. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Thank you, ma'am. Very warm welcome to all the attendees to this third webinar in the webinar series on IoT M2M applications in key application verticals. I must appreciate the efforts made by TSDSI in jointly organizing this webinar series with NT unit of DOT headquarters. And this third webinar will be mainly focused on health vertical. Earlier on the 5th of April, the first webinar was held wherein the theme was transportation vertical, and seconded by it was followed by the second webinar which focused on the utilities vertical, and that was held on the 4th of May 22. The main objective of these webinars is to disseminate awareness amongst the key line ministries on how IoT M2M based technology applications can achieve efficiency in delivery of services to end users in a very cost effective manner, and motivate the ministries to adopt such technologies to achieve efficiencies in various domains of their work profile. Each webinar in this series will showcase global and domestic applications, including pilots, field trials, deployments in a focus vertical tentatively spanning transportation, utilities, agriculture, health, industry 4.0 and smart cities. So agriculture, industry 4.0 and smart cities are some of the key verticals which we would like to take up subsequent to the current webinar. I would like to thank Sri A.K. Tiwari, Member Technology Digital Communications Commission, for agreeing to deliver the inaugural address for the webinar, but unfortunately he has been called by the PMO for a very urgent deliberation, so we would miss him, but nonetheless his blessings are with us, and I thank him profusely for his continuing guidance and support for proliferation of M2M IoT and various services related to this particular domain. I would like to thank all the esteemed speakers, including Professor Arjad Alam Kherani, who is chair SGSS TSDSI, and from IIT Bhilai. Unfortunately, Dr. Nada Philip, Associate Professor and Founder, Kingston University, London, who had agreed to deliver the session on global context deployment, has suddenly fallen sick, and she would not be able to deliver her address. But she has conveyed her good blessings to us, so we thank her once again for agreeing to deliver, but due to the unfortunate event of her falling sick, she is not with us today. I would also like to extend thanks to speakers from National Institute of Health and Family Welfare, various academic institutions and industry for agreeing to address the webinar and enlighten the participants on the key opportunities for M2M IoT in the respective areas. Once again, I thank the speakers for agreeing to share their experiences. I hereby also welcome all the participants to the webinar once again. We hope that this webinar would prove useful to each one of us, and it will help us to take full benefits arising out of the opportunities in this IoT M2M sector. We are very enthused by the huge response that we got in the previous two webinars, and this healthy participation by all the people across the country, from the field units of DOT, from the industry, from the M2M service providers. This encourages us to develop our efforts to make more sincere efforts in the future endeavors. This entire healthcare industry is poised to undergo an unprecedented transformation, as we all know that due to the recent coronavirus pandemic, it has forced hundreds of millions of people worldwide to change their behaviors, and certain things which were not thought of in the past have now become new normal, so to say. So we all see substantial growth in the healthcare industry, largely propelled by IoT technology and applications deployed for health status monitoring, wellness, and acute care. Additional enablers for the growth include high-speed connectivity, which we are very hopeful that with the launch of 5G in the very near future, and with different aspects of 5G service like slice and all, then embedded sensor solutions and wearable applications. So some of these solutions I hope will be showcased in today's webinar. I sincerely hope that this webinar will be able to fulfill its main objective, which is to disseminate awareness among the participants and industry members about the M2M IoT driven opportunities arising in health sector. Thank you all once again. I now hand over the floor to Sonia ji. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your remarks. Sir, I think there is a question for you in the Q&A tab, which I will just read out. The question is from Mr. Yadav. Proliferation or utility of M2M communication will much more once 5G or IoT will be launched commercially as real-time process can modeled. Kindly give your views.
There is hardly any doubt in what he says.
Thank you, sir. We would now like to request Professor Arzad Alam Kherani, Chair, SGSS Working Group 2, TSDSI, to set the context for the webinar today. Dr. Arzad Alam Kherani is currently the Chair of TSDSI SGSS Working Group 2, Applications and Service Layer Standards, AIML. He is the Associate Professor, Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at IIT Bhilai. He has worked on broad areas of computer networks, queuing systems, wireless communications. He has also worked for industry for a decade and gained experience with product conceptualization, product design and development, industrial R&D and standardization. He did his master's and PhD from IISc Bangalore. Sir, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Sonia ma'am. Asif, can I share my screen, please? Okay. If I'm audible, fine. And if you can see my screen.
You're audible properly, sir. Yeah, now screen also visible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So what I will do is I will start with this a perspective that I came across some time back, and this figure actually gives the standard a keyword that we have been listening about a lot. Is about communication and computer converging, right? So this is an image, a kind of a time projection from 1977 conference, which says that communication and computation will kind of converge. And it is a great honor, and I'm fortunate to have worked with many, and here also in the audience there are many experienced people who have kind of been involved with this kind of convergence. Now, how does that relate to our current topic? If you look at it, essentially from point of view of healthcare, we see that here is an overly simplistic view of what we are going to talk about. This is essentially communication for healthcare is what we are going to talk about today. So if you look at it, the healthcare industry has essentially a processing aspect in the healthcare industry has moved very, very quickly. And what seems to have happened is that the response, so this huge or very fast change in the processing aspects in healthcare industry imposed some requirements on the communication aspect as well, right? But the response from communication industry was essentially that there's a lot of small local connectivity, lots of keywords started coming in, and we all ended up in some kind of weird architecture, which was essentially something like this. Essentially, this image is about, I mean, this is what we were dealing with in 2010-ish, 2013, 2014 time period. We were thinking that a smartphone will be a hub essentially for all the health-related connections, and lots of such architecture were there. I was working for a company, and I actually presented this kind of figure here. Right. One of the biggest problems with this kind of approach was that it had proprietary stamped almost everywhere throughout end to end. Right? So it was very hard to essentially remove, get into a modular way, remove things at your will. So you had a vendor lock-in and all kinds of stuff. So now, what I think is that a lot has changed now. So here what I'll do is just give you a brief overview of the kind of work that we are doing, and I'll show how that is related to the discussion that we are having currently. One of the examples is that we are involved with a smart ambulance solution at IIT Bhilai, where if we forget about all the technical parts, so there's a lot of technical details in all of this. This is a complicated system. Essentially, our idea is that there's a smart ambulance which has to kind of transfer this high definition video from a moving ambulance in the uplink. So please remember that we are talking about uplink to a hospital, right? So we have technological solutions for this now, and we think that it is a good solution, obviously. And we are able to get the video from the ambulance to the hospital using some machine learning and all those kind of fancy things here, right? From an outside person's point of view, this is all they care about is that video is getting transferred from ambulance to the hospital without any delay jitter, significant delay jitter. But there are issues with this. If we just go and impose our solution on hospitals and service providers and the ambulance aggregators, it is not going to be accepted directly. I mean, we need to have some kind of standardization. So I'll talk about how in Indian context, we have many people working on this field. We started realizing that standardization is has to go in hand in hand with this. Another example is my company, which is Advanced Technologies Private Limited, where we are looking at cows, collecting their data remotely, and then doing some machine learning on that. Right. So that's actually me in a tabela in near dairy farm near our in IIT Bhilai, where we have installed this solution. Here also we do artificial insemination using this gun, and we use some fancy macro model kind of approach for machine learning. Again, there is a need for standardization because you can see that there are lots of points here where things are getting locked. Another is the work that we are doing on telesurgery, where we are trying to leverage edge computing for low latency. Right now, we are nowhere near telesurgery, obviously, but a basic setup is where we have a haptic glove, which is trying to control a robotic hand. And you have this edge solution in between, which is again running some interesting algorithms to do, for example, slip detection, to avoid the delays. So to avoid something proactively. Okay, so this is a very brief overview of the 3 health-related activities that we are doing. The issue is, so at the same time, we are also contributing to standardization because now there's an increased realization. So thanks to efforts from DOT, TSDSI, and many such players and enablers in India, that there's an increased realization that what you're doing should be viewed in a global picture format, essentially. So for a smart ambulance, as our head-based work, we are actively involved in standardization in TSDSI and 3G. We have gotten a lot of support from DOT and government agencies, and the one good thing, which is a very good thing for today also, is that DOT has been very active in bringing diverse background and skill sets. Just being able to get them together is a big achievement, in my opinion. So hopefully what I have conveyed is that a lot has been achieved, but a lot has to be done still. And that is what we are looking forward to hear from the experts and practitioners today on their vision. So with that, I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As informed by Toshniwal, sir, due to an urgent meeting at PMO, member T will not be able to join the webinar. So now I would request Mr. Manish Saxena, Director NT DOT, to give vote of thanks. Shri Manish Saxena is an officer of Indian Telecommunication Service belonging to 1993 batch. He has a vast experience of more than 27 years in various capacities in the field of telecommunications. During these years, he has worked at various positions in Department of Telecommunications, BSNL, and TRI. He holds a degree of BE, Electronics and Telecommunications, and MBA in Finance. Presently, Shri Manish Saxena is working as Director, Networks and Technologies in DOT headquarters, New Delhi, and he is coordinating the activities related to IoT and M2M technologies and services. Sir, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Sonia. Good afternoon, respected Professor Arjad Alam Khirani, IIT Bhilai, Shri D.D. Toshniwal sir, DDG Anti-DOT, and other speakers, eminent speakers, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Associate Professor NIHFW, Professor Harish Kumar from Punjab University, Dr. Jainul Charviwala, co-founder and CTO Tricog Health, Mr. Vishnu Madhuri Sugathan, co-founder and CEO, Dr. Tav Pritesh Sethi, Associate Professor from IIT Delhi, and all the participants. It's my pleasure to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I, Manish Saxena, Director NT DOT Headquarters, on behalf of DOT and TSDSI, and on my own behalf, extend my sincere gratitude to Professor Arjad Alam Khirani, IIT Bhilai, and Chair SGSS WG2 TSDSI for sparing his valuable time to grace this webinar being organized jointly by DOT and TSDSI. As said by DDG NT Shri D.D. Toshniwal earlier, this is the third in the series of webinar on IoT M2M applications in key verticals. This webinar would focus on health vertical. The purpose of this webinar is to strengthen the M2M ecosystem in the country and facilitate wider proliferation and innovation in the sector. Thank you, Professor Khirani, for setting the context of webinar and your insightful views and sharing with us your interesting knowledge of the subject. You have highlighted the convergence of computers and communications, the very simplistic view of communication for healthcare, problem faced earlier because of the proprietary issues, and now the technological evolution has made the things better, but still there is a need for standardization and there are challenges for that. So thank you very much, sir, for sharing the knowledge with us. I would also like to thank Shri D.D. Toshniwal sir, DDG NT, for the opening remarks and giving the contours of the webinars. Sir, you have highlighted the opportunities, potential and benefits of IoT M2M applications in health sector, and very rightly describe this technology as to be a game changer in very near future. His continuous support, motivation, encouragement and guidance, inspiring and encouraging words for the efforts of the team are highly welcome, sir. I also welcome all the eminent speaker, and I thank all the eminent speaker who would be deliberating on various aspects of IoT M2M applications in the health sector in global as well as in the Indian context. I thank all the participants present here. I am sure this webinar will prove to be a very good opportunity for learning, interaction, exchange of ideas and views, and it will be a very enriching experience for every participant. Thank you all. Now I request Ms. Sonia to further progress this program.
Thank you, Manish sir. Now we would like to move on to our next session, Benefits of IoT M2M Enabled Healthcare, by Mr. Manish Khare, COO, Sensorise Digital Service Private Limited. Mr. Manish Khare is the Chief Operating Officer, Sensorise. He brings with him decades of diverse experience in IT and telecom industry with in-depth knowledge of enterprise sales and expertise in planning, implementing, and integrating the strategic business solutions across domains. As an industry leader, his ability to identify new market opportunities, models, and solution gaps facilitates a global perspective to convert ideas into a solution. He is passionate about staying abreast of the latest technology trends and evolving digital business transformation space, particularly around 5G, MEC, SaaS, and CX, and the recipient of multiple awards and accolades across regional and global organizations. Sir, the floor is yours now. I would request Shifali to bring up Dr. Khare's slide deck.
Thank you, Sonia. Yeah.
Thank you, and hello and a warm welcome to respected members of DOT as well as the TSDSI organization and friends and colleagues from the industry. I hope I'm audible, Sonia.
Yes, you are audible, Mr. Manish. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry, some background noise at the venue where I'm currently presenting my slides from. So first of all, a very thanks to Shri Toshniwal DDG DOT for inviting us to this webinar and making us part of the industry association and present our case for the benefits of IoT M2M enabled healthcare applications. So we at Sensorize we make ourselves proud by being the first in the industry to take the concept of IoT M2M into the market and have been a leader since the last 7 years into the IoT M2M space, predominantly around the telematics and automobiles. But now we see that as the market is opening up, there are a lot more use cases coming up in other sectors, including that of healthcare. And as rightly highlighted by Toshniwal sir, that the pandemic has actually fast forwarded the developments in this particular sector, and we see a lot of development, a lot of changes happening in the overall ecosystem, right from the infrastructure to the patients and as well as to the entire community of healthcare givers, including the doctors, the nurses, as well as the infrastructure which is in place right now, with a lot of connectivity aspects coming into it, because the biggest fear right now under the pandemic is physical contact. So we really see the IoT M2M market exploding in the coming days. So if we can move to the next slide. So some of the high level agenda which we'll be covering in this slide would be how the pandemic has reshaped the healthcare industry in the last 2 years. Some of the applications as we see emerging in this space resting on the IoT M2M, and what is the kind of typical architecture we see. Some of the use cases and benefits coming out of usage of IoT M2M in the healthcare industry, and some of the aspects which we have been able to address as Sensorize around the security as well as the reliability on the communication layer of the M2M IoT ecosystem in the healthcare industry. So next slide, please. So now this is a view on in terms of the market size, how we see the market for IoT M2M in healthcare moving. Something which started as just around a $50-60 billion market before the pandemic struck, has actually tripled to more than $200 billion over the last coming 5 to 6 years. And this is one of the fastest growing sectors. Again, coming back to the pandemic, it has completely reshaped the healthcare industry with introduction of concept like telemedicine, which was completely unheard in the Indian market before the pandemic. So we have the highest teledensity across the globe, where 40 to 50% of the market is currently working out of smartphones, giving access to smart and intelligent applications which can access medical facilities on the go. So the medical caregiver or the doctors do not need to be in physical proximity to be able to administer medical advice or medicines to treat any of the ailments. This has led to proliferation of telecommunication and M2M IoT in the treatment diagnosis as well as the research facilities as well as applications in the industry. Next slide, please. So some of the use cases or insights we have gathered by working very closely with the Ministry of Health and Welfare is the developments around the predictive hospital admission and management through remote monitoring of patients. So we come across a lot of small towns and villages where the patients or the healthcare receiver is not in physical proximity of the hospital or the doctors. So what can be done around this? And as highlighted by Professor Kirani also earlier in the session, that the usage of sensors on the patients actually helps us in providing remote monitoring of the patient, and as well as the capture of vitals of the patient, which can help the doctor to take decision and provide prescription even from remote locations. This can happen in real time, and the value which Sensorize brings in is providing real time quality driven connectivity between the remote patient and the medical facility. This could be done on any 2G, 3G, or even 4G network wherever available, with multiple connectivity options possible. This also helps in the utilization and uh, administration and monitoring of the resources. Like one of the use cases which we are currently working with is whereby there have been government funded projects of oxygen generators. So the oxygen generator is uh, pumping oxygen to hospital facilities at a specific concentration and at a specific pressure. So there are sensors which are monitoring the concentration as well as the pressure of oxygen being supplied to the hospital beds. Now, this is a dashboard which the Ministry of Health would like to monitor on a real-time basis, that it does not go below a threshold limit. So, Sensorize has the capability and has developed, certain use cases where we can have this monitored across any distance, any geography, using our proprietary technology. Again, this has also usage in the drug manufacturing as well as distribution setup, especially especially Prime Minister's scheme of distributing medicines to underprivileged at subsidized rates. So the entire value chain and the supply chain can be monitored through this. Next slide, please. So this is overall the architecture, how we see the ecosystem working right now. And as we can clearly see that the remote cellular connectivity is a key aspect between the doctors, the patients, as well as the devices, which have to be enabled on the IoT M2M ecosystem to be able to, infer intelligent insights from not only the patient's vitals, but also patient care. Next slide, please. So, as already highlighted by Professor Kirani, the ambulance tracking or the medical fleet management is definitely something which Ministry of Health is really, keen to get going, whereby there is a live tracking on the ambulance. And in fact, that is one use case. We would be happy to collaborate with IIT Bhilai also on the usage of connectivity with real-time video surveillance of the ambulance, so that there could be predictive and proactive preparation at the hospital end while the patient is being transferred from a remote site to a healthcare facility. And preliminary healthcare can be given by the healthcare giver right in the ambulance itself to save some precious last few minutes. And as the ambulance approaches closer to the health facility, an alert can go out in terms of what can be ready at the hospital doorstep to save some precious moments and save many lives. This is something which we would love to work on a test bed up, but IoT M2M as a technology is a real enabler for this use case. Again, a real-time asset dashboard, like the example I gave you about the oxygen generators. We are actually seeking partnership with medical device makers who would want to have real-time dashboards for the performance of their utilizations and assets across the various health schemes being currently implemented across the country. Also, there are applications in the telemedicine insurance, including Ayushman Bharat Yojana, whereby patient data can be monitored, can be verified, can be authenticated at the source itself to enable dispersal of insurance schemes run by the government of India. We also have developed an app for Anganwadi and Asha workers, which could help them to log in their details on a mobile app running on a smartphone, and which could help in tracking and support and provide timely intervention as well as information outflow to Anganwadi and Asha workers across the country. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are some of the benefits which have come out of our studies and tests done in the IoT M2M space, especially for the healthcare segment. One, obviously, it saves a lot of transportation and movement costs because the patient can be provided the benefits of health schemes launched by government across the country, irrespective of where the physical location of the patient is. It also helps in faster diagnosis, and sometimes in real time, the patient will not have to wait for the medical facility to arrive to him or her to travel to the medical facility. We we have developed some low cost solutions where the patient could be diagnosed on a real time basis, either through video or through some sort of assisted caregiving. This also reduces error in terms of the information which flows through the paperwork. This information can be accessed by the doctors and the healthcare givers irrespective of where they are located, and it also provides real-time analytics not only on patients but various equipments deployed in the healthcare segment right now. Next slide, please. One of the key aspects of IoT M2M, which has been earlier ignored, has been around security. So we provide a standards-based solution which provides end-to-end encryption of any of this patient data or equipment data which moves on the public GSM network. So the information coming out is encrypted right from the source up to the cloud or to the backend server where this is stored. So this provides a reliable standards-based solution on the IoT M2M layer for the healthcare ecosystem. Next slide, please. Again, as we highlighted right in the start, that Sensorize has been able to provide assured quality of service with as high uptime as possible by relying on its solutions around multi-profile or multi-network connectivity on a single device. We have often found that especially in villages and towns where the network capability of a single operator is not so strong, we provide solution of providing multiple networks with auto switchover capability to give quality of service. As highlighted in the previous slide, the encryption is an important aspect, feature of the IoT M2M capability developed by Sensorize. And we are 100% compliant and a DOT certified M2M service provider under the new set of guidelines issued recently. Next slide, please. So we call the solution as CoSIM. This is again based on a multi-profile subscription, which has the capability to switch itself from the strongest network available at that particular location. These are industrial grade, connectivity modules which sits on any device, be it a sensor or be it a large like a CT machine or an X-ray machine, which can be operated and which could be worked through remote. And this is again based on BIS 16833 standard. This is again a very telco agnostic solution, not relying on a particular telecom operator or on a network. We can work across 2G, 3G as well as 4G network depending upon the availability with automatic fallback. Next slide, please. this is just describing how the security encryption works end to end on the solution. Next slide, please. Okay, with that, I would like to end my presentation. And once again, thank you everyone for providing us this forum to present our use cases. And we look forward to working with industry as well as the regulatory authorities to come up with guidelines and guidance in this segment, which can help us to harness the potential of the IoT M2M in the healthcare industry. Thank you.
Manish, there is one question for you. In IoT architecture for healthcare, how you are managing security and privacy, especially in these M-Health, M-IoT heterogeneous environments? Can you please answer?
Yeah, sure. So as highlighted on a couple of slides, that we have developed a technology by which this is a India patented technology where we have developed the capability of the device as well as the card on which the communication channel develops to have a end-to-end encrypted information exchange between the source and the backend server or the analytics which happens on the cloud. So the encryption is the key solution, part of the solution which we have to offer on IoT M2M. So this ensures that the information shared by the hospital or the patient is encrypted and it is not tampered or it is not available, accessible to any other party apart from the one which it is intended for.
Thank you. Another question is somewhat related. How can someone trust you before sharing healthcare information with you, your device or system?
So again, this is completely, GSM standards based information. We are an audited Department of Telecom certified M2M service provider, and currently we manage more than 1.5 million profiles in terms of cellular connectivity, and the data is 100% kept private, and it is all hosted in India. But again, the medical applications for which this is being used, the encryption ensures that the cloud to patient or cloud to source connectivity is 100% end-to-end encrypted, and nobody has access or capability to look through the information. I can request the question, whoever has raised the question, to feel free to get in touch with my technical team, and we would be happy to go through the complete solution and how we implement the security and the trust in our system so that any concerns in this regard are duly addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manish.
Yeah.
Ms. Sonia, you can continue with the session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Our next speaker, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, I think he's in some meeting till 3:30. So I would request if Professor Harish can speak. Harish, sir, is it okay with you?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Okay. So I would like to
give
request
the
Professor
screen
Harish.
share, right? Yeah. You need to give the screen share rights.
Yes,
Yep.
sir. Yes, I will be giving you first. Let me just introduce you, and then I'll be giving you the screen share rights. So Professor Harish is a keen STEM researcher and enthusiastically engaging professor with a proven record of completion of various projects funded by different industries, Ministry of Electronics and IT, MOOE, Government of India, and World Bank. His areas of interest include telecommunication, telehealth convergence, entrepreneurship, standards development, and compliance. He is the Z-founder of the Telecommunication Research Laboratory at Punjab University. He led the team to develop a TEC-approved VoIP product, Na Sanchar, a unique initiative in academic setup in India. As co-PI in ICMR Center for Innovation and Biodesign, a unique experiment of collaboration between engineers and medical professionals, he has produced a number of products and intellectual property. In Center of Innovation and Biodesign, he has developed a telehealth solution with IoT integrated medical lab for the remote areas. Currently, he is mentoring 2 startups in medtech and 1 in mobility solutions. He has been awarded Visvesvaraya Fellowship by MIT. So the floor is yours now.
Yep. Thank you.
Asif, request if you can give presenter rights to Professor Harish.
Yeah, rights have been given, sir.
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon to one and all. So let me share my slides. So I suppose my slides are visible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so today I will be sharing with you an experiment which we did in Chandigarh and in the state of Himachal Pradesh by deploying IoT based solution in the healthcare sector. This experiment, this development we did with an entity which is known as Center for Innovation and Biodesign. Center for Innovation and Biodesign is a sponsored center by Indian Council of Medical Research, and this center is located at Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research in Chandigarh, and it is one of its kind healthcare innovation hub and startup incubator established in various medical colleges or research institutes across India. This center basically aims to promote innovation in medical devices, instruments, life sciences, healthcare products, clinical research, healthcare delivery, etc., where we try to involve all the stakeholders like different research institutions. It can be medical research institutions or the other technical research institutions, government ministries, as well as health sector located globally, including the hospitals. So we identified a challenge. This challenge is identified during the COVID-19 pandemic, which created a lot of disruptions. Everyone knows those disruptions. And the challenge is that we need to shift the healthcare sector from hospital-centric sector to the home-specific care or near to the home-specific care. And we also need to shift it to the round-the-clock infrastructure. We need to provide ubiquitous access to all the sections of the society, irrespective of the financial status, irrespective of the social status. And Internet of Medical Things clubbed with the healthcare sector can provide a lot of scope for improving the health sector services in these areas. And to achieve this thing, we need to update and upgrade the health infrastructure with the new innovations. So this is the challenge which we adopted. And once we adopted this challenge, then we try to identify the problems which are faced by the patients. So we did a study in PGI where what we found that non-availability of proper medical services at primary healthcare sector, PHC level in the remote areas. We found wrong diagnosis or treatment by quacks in the remote areas, particularly in the villages, colonies, etc. We found that services in the private sector in the remote areas are expensive, hence sometimes out of reach of the people who are below poverty line or who are the poor people, we can say. Then there is lack of uniformity and transparency in the accounting and billing also. Another problem which we found is the long distance. Patients has the multiple visits to the tertiary care hospitals. For example, to quote certain examples, in case of PGI, patients usually come by traveling from 100 or 150 kilometers on one day to consult a doctor. After consultation, doctor usually asks some tests to be done. Then again, one visit is required to get those tests done. And after the test, then again, with the test reports, the patient needs to consult the doctor. So this is typically happening in the tertiary care hospitals in India. And sometimes patient after the first consultation drops out, or sometimes they say, okay, we will go after a couple of weeks for the testing get done. So it is ultimately affecting the health of the patients. And the same thing, number of multiple visits are also contributing to the loss of wages, carbon footprints, and poor compliance of the standards. Then another problem we identified is long waiting time due to in the government hospitals due to the crowd of the patients and inadequate manpower and infrastructure. So once we identified all these problems, then we started working out a solution, and this is the solution which we worked out. It is based on the sensors. We devised a telehealth system along with the point of care diagnostics. This solution has approximately 60 plus different tests which can be conducted on this on this system, and doctor can also be consulted remotely by using this particular system. It has certain non-invasive tests as well as certain invasive tests. So it is basically automated system with health screening and diagnostics, online consultation with the doctor, integrated point of care laboratory. It has 12-channel ECG. It has digital stethoscope, digital spirometer. It has cloud and hardware interface, etc. And all these things are basically embedded into this system by integrating, by using various sensors embedded into the devices. For example, for digital stethoscope, we used various devices to build that digital stethoscope and ultimately to integrate this kind of device. The system has some devices integrated which have the clinical significance. So we have the spirometry for the patients for the lung volume and vital capacity testing, particularly asthma, etc. We have digital stethoscope, which also has a single channel ECG for quick monitoring of the ECG, along with the other things like heart examination. We also have urine strip analyzer, which is integrated with this particular machine, where the operator only has to basically put up the sample, and the results will be automatically fed into the system. Then rapid diagnostics is also integrated into the system. Then there are different for various tests like biochemistry analyzer that is also integrated with the system, which can do all the basic tests. So by inclusive of all these devices, we can do 60 plus tests on this particular machine without the minimal intervention of a person. And the overall architecture which we envisioned for this product is that this particular machine can be installed in the different PHCs or in the remote locations, where along with the machine there will be basic testing requirement. There will not be any medical professional required apart from a trained health worker who can just operate the machine, take the blood samples or urine samples if required, and can just put those samples into the different components of the machine. And then automatically the results will be fed into the machine, and then the patient can consult the doctor on the same machine. The doctor with specialty Can be in any other hospital. It can be the tertiary care hospital. It can be some multi-specialty hospital. It can be any of the medical college nearby or civil hospital nearby. And then 24/7 access of the record is available to doctor as well as to patient, and along with the trained healthcare worker who is handling that particular patient, and whole of the data is available on the cloud. This is something related to the field trials when we did it in the field before, while we were developing this entire system. So we deployed it during the COVID at 6 different locations spread over Himachal and Punjab. And then we did the trials, improved the machines, and ultimately we developed the entire system, which is currently available for deployment. And for the demo of this particular machine, I'm just showing you one video where I will explain that how it works. This is one of the telehealth kiosk system. Once you enter into the facility, then basically trained healthcare worker will talk to the patient. The girl with this white jacket is the patient, and the girl with this orange jersey is the healthcare worker. So the trained healthcare worker will basically register the patient, and then will do certain non-invasive tests like height, weight, BMI will be automatically calculated, NIBP, non-invasive blood pressure, etc. For example, the patient will stand up, then the parameters will get recorded. So this is a standard procedure to be adopted in any hospital. So if you will see that all the machines are integrated, the standard NIBP system is also integrated in the machine, which will automatically record the blood pressure into the system, the standard device, but digitized into this particular setup. And after that, there are certain step-based tests also, which can be done on the same machine. And ultimately, the patient can also take the print of the parameters which got tested. Then the consultation, after capturing all these basic parameters, the consultation with the doctor will start. So after the consultation, the patient will tell the problem, and doctor may suggest certain further tests to be done. Once the doctor will suggest the further test from the same machine, further test will be downloaded on the adjoining machines. It can be urine analyzer, it can be biochemistry analyzer, or it can be the other machines on which the test is to be done. Then the same healthcare worker will take the blood sample. So now if you look at this particular machine, this is the biochemistry analyzer where all the details of the patient will come, and the only thing the healthcare worker has to do to collect the sample, incubate the sample, and put it into this particular machine. Then the machine will do the test in the standard normal time and upload against this particular UHID into the database. So we tried to basically reduce the human data punching error as well. And then ultimately, after the completion of all the tests, again, the doctor can be consulted, and where doctor can give either further testing like 12-channel ECG is there or something like that, or the doctor can give the prescription. So this is just the demo of the other devices. So ultimately, patient can go from the facility. So basically, if we come back to this overall architecture, so all these things in the are happening in the vicinity of the patient's location, wherever the patient is residing. So number one, we have tried to reduce the travel time. Number two, we tried to reduce the gap between the special doctor and the patient. Number three, we tried to reduce the human errors of data collection and try to reduce the overall cost and try to enhance the wellness of the patient. So thank you. If there are any further questions, you are most welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. So question and answers will be taken at the end of the session. So if you have any questions, participants may write in the question and answers tab. I would now like to invite Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Associate Professor, National Institute of Health and Family Welfare, NIHFW, to present on opportunities for IoT M2M in health. Dr. Sanjay Gupta is currently the professor and head for the Department of Community Health Administration at NIHFW, the National Institute of Health and Family Welfare, New Delhi. Dr. Gupta's career includes more than 30 years of extensive experience in project management and coordinating trainings, and he has trained many postgraduate students. Dr. Sanjay Gupta has been the nodal officer for NCC VMRC, National Cold Chain and Vaccine Management Resource Center. He has led several national level assessments for immunization program, including National Vaccine Wastage Assessment, Need Assessment for Tribal Immunization, EVM Assessment, etc. Sir, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you very much, Sonia ji. And I'm a professor currently, associate professor, bahut saal pehle tha. So please make the correction. Okay, so it's a pleasure, interacting with all of you in this webinar. And I would request the organizers to please put up my PPT.
So the
Okay.
PPT is...
So yeah, it's out there. So, we will discuss some of the opportunities that are there in IoT M2M. And just for an information, some time back, I didn't know what IoT meant or M2M meant. So, these are terminologies which may be familiar to many of you, but for me, I didn't know them. But then I did some reading, and later on, I'll tell you that NIHFW, National Institute of Health and Family Welfare, is the nodal center now, the center of excellence for promoting these IoT and M2M related cases in the health sector. So we got into it, and I'll share some of the experiences or some of the things that I would like you to know. Next, please. So I'm presuming that some of you are not so, learned as others, because people with an IT background definitely have a lot of information on these things. So I just put two slides that there is a boom in IoT and M2M. You can call it a wave, and it will be something that is going to be the future. Lot of data is being generated and communicated through connected machines, and hospitals and healthcare industries are also, part of it. And the use of IoT and M2M has immense potential in the health sector. So we'll see further some of the things that are there. Next, please. Again, for those who don't know M2M, most of you may be knowing, but that actually means machine to machine communication. It may be web based, it may be directly linked also. But many of you would be wearing these Fitbits and similar devices which actually are connected, interconnected. Another way is a wireless connectivity. So this is what we have to build upon now, especially in the health sector. Next. Medical devices, there has been a lot of change, and because of the connectivity, lot of improvements in the usage. During the COVID pandemic, some of you may have seen items, news items, even maybe have visited in the ICU settings. Supposedly, the patients have to be monitored. There was a time when the monitoring was done only in the ICU, but today there is a provision where the treating physician or the treating ICU person can get the information about what is happening with the patient without actually seeing the patient. So this you have seen in the COVID scenario a lot, and this is how things have started changing. Next. The devices that are there, because they are very specific and very complex devices, so there is very less margin of error. So there should be mechanisms inbuilt in the system where the device is able to tell you that what is wrong or when something is wrong. Many of you would be having, just to give you a simple example, many of you would be having RO filters in your homes. So now the latest RO filters, they give you in 6 months or 9 months time an indication that now it is time to change the filter or whatever, membrane or anything. Now this is how the technology has actually started, and the same thing is being used in the medical field also, the medical devices. Okay, next. The devices that are there in hospitals, the number of and the variety of devices is immense, but slowly the devices are becoming more of recorders of data. So we have lot of data which is available to us even after a long time. Some of you may be knowing that we have had a system, Holter, you may have heard. This is a very old concept where for 24 hours, the ECG type nodes are put up in the human body, and the recording of the heart, that is the ECG recording for 24 hours is done. Now, this is one of the basic devices that was used. But nowadays, we have lot of these devices where the data is, stored and it can be transmitted immediately without any human interface. So this is there. Then in many of the medical colleges now, through these kinds of devices, virtual dissection of the human body is done. When I was a medical student, we used to actually do the dissection, that is cut open the human body. But now, because of the lack of human bodies for dissection, there are many colleges who are making do with virtual dissection of the human body. These are some of the things that are there, and there are many places where robots are used for diagnosis, disinfection, and many other activities. So this is how the IoT M2M things have started changing the hospital scenarios. Next. Now coming to some of the governmental initiatives in public health, because up till now we were talking about devices and hospitals which are, you know, mainly for tertiary care. But in the general public health also, some initiatives have started, and we have made, the government has made use of in IoT and M2M. This is a very good example. Some of you may be familiar with this. Even Electronic Vaccine Intelligence Network. Now, India has a huge load of vaccination. During COVID, all of us have understood that we have become one world leaders in COVID vaccination. But before that also, India was the major vaccine supplier to the world for other, say, DPT, polio and everything. We are the biggest vaccine manufacturer. But vaccines are supposed to be maintained at a particular temperature. It's generally, you know, at the periphery, it is 2 to 8 degrees centigrade. Now, this is called the cold chain. The cold chain, if it is not maintained properly, then the vaccines become ineffective, and vaccines are very costly in general. So this even was started in 2015, and phase wise it has now, you know, come to the whole country. Temperature recorders or loggers have been installed in each and every cold chain equipment in the country. And just to give you an idea, we have more than 1.5 lakh of electrical cold chain equipment across the country, which is not a small thing. So these loggers are, you know, taking care of the temperature every 10 minutes, and every 60 minutes the data is uploaded. And smartphones were given to the cold chain handlers, who get regular alerts as soon as there is some breach of temperature. If there is, you know, higher temperature or lower temperature, which both, you know, make the vaccine ineffective, immediately the person who is the in charge gets that alert, and he or she is able to take corrective action. And this has really saved India crores and crores of vaccine over a period of time. Similarly, real-time updation of vaccine stock is also done through Even. And the requirements are basically having a smartphone for the workers. There is a web-based application and temperature loggers installed in the cold chain equipment, and we need cloud-based services for, you know, transfer of data and monitoring. All of you have seen Cowin. Cowin is basically built on the Even, you know, platform. So Cowin, India, you must be knowing, India is one of the few countries where Cowin has, you know, given lot of inputs in the COVID vaccination. And just recently you may have seen that Indian certificates, vaccine certificates are through Cowin, and most of you would be having them also. They are very well designed and very, you know, perfect certificate. Most of the countries in the world, including the United States of America, give physical certificates. You know, they are just like certificates on paper. So this is how technology can actually help in many of these things. Next. One or two more examples. You must have heard of the 108 services everywhere, almost everywhere. The number may vary, but most of the country it is 108. This is the EMRI services, and there are some other places also. This is the GPS enabled ambulances which reach the patient in the shortest possible time, 10 to 15 minutes generally. And trained emergency management technicians accompanies the patient in the ambulance, and they are brought to the health facility. Now, the improvement in this, which we are looking at, is having, because that trained emergency technician is in constant touch with the doctor. But now, if we are able to have the, you know, vitals and everything constantly, you know, monitored by the doctor, where the patient is going to come, it will save a lot of time. So many of you would have heard of the term the golden hour. Golden hour, especially when we talk about, you know, cardiac events or even brain events. These 1 hour is most important. So technology can help in, you know, saving lives in that. Okay, next. Then one or two speakers have also talked about telemedicine services. Telemedicine is not a very new concept, but yes, COVID-19 has, given us that confidence that telemedicine services can actually replace lot of personal or face-to-face consultation. So there's lot of opportunity in increasing the telemedicine services, and I was listening to the presentation by Professor Harish. Lot of testing can be done at the local level and the results transmitted to a higher level institution. He was talking about, say, PGI, where without the physical presence of the doctor, lot of decision making can be done through the telemedicine and the diagnostic services. And 5G and 5GI, which is the Indian version or standard, whatever you want to call it, where we are looking at expanding our reach in the rural areas, because still India lives in the rural areas. So this is very important when we talk about the reach of all these kinds of initiatives, and the connectivity should be there. Again, radiological images. There was a time when when one of us went for an X-ray, then we had to wait. Well, you must have also seen, those of you who are my age or maybe slightly smaller, the film will be washed and this and that, and then it will be reported by a radiologist. Today, X-ray or MRI or CT, it is all transported to the images are transported without the radiologist actually being there, and the reporting is done. Now this is a very big advancement. The devices can be at a village level, and the specialist or the radiologist can be at a higher center, and this really helps the patients in a long way. Next. Then there are many governmental initiatives where web-based, SMS-based applications. There I have listed out one or two of them. E-Rakt Kosh, some of you may have heard of it. E-Rakt Kosh is an app through which the real-time availability of blood in all the blood banks in a city is there. So the people don't need to hunt around. Suppose there is a requirement of, say, B negative, which is not so common, or O negative or something. Through the application, the treating physician and the system knows that this blood is available at, not at my hospital, but it is available at this hospital, and lot of time is saved when these kind of applications are used, and patients get the benefit of that. Most of you would have heard of Mera Aspatal. It is a feedback mechanism for the government hospitals. So when the government, when the patient registers in the government facility, the Mera Aspatal app, sends an SMS to the patient that please submit your feedback within 7 days. Okay, so this is an auto-generated feedback mechanism. As soon as you have a registration there, the hospital or the SMS is sent to the patient that please give your feedback. So these are some of the initiatives which have made use of IoT. Okay, next. Now coming to what are the steps the government is taking. DOT, and under the umbrella of the government of India, they are doing pioneering work. Lot of initiatives have been taken in registering applicants and promoting startups, in trying to see that they get into this business of healthcare through IoT and M2M. And NHFW very recently has been designated as the Center of Excellence for promoting IoT and M2M in health sector on behalf of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And only today morning we had a whole 1.5 hour session by about 9 companies telling us, by us I mean to say the different officers in the Directorate General of Health Services, the Ministry of Health and associated bodies, what are the different use cases or the things that they have developed, just like some of them were discussed before me. So this is how things have been they have started moving, and I hope that things will improve. Next. Time is a constraint, so I'll just wind up in the next 2-3 minutes. The advantages is that healthcare costs are reduced by a very big margin when the remote working is there. Then lot of changes can be brought about by linking devices and trying to get a complete picture. I was listening to the presentation by Dr. Harish. 30, 40, 50 tests at a very nominal cost through one test, and it can be communicated to the treating physician, and the decision or the treatment protocols can be set. Next. One or two use cases or things that have been started by different agencies, but there are many others. I am only giving you one or two, but this is how things are. Mobile clinics, it's an old concept, but the mobile clinics becoming 5G enabled, where the e-prescriptions, e-reports, ultrasound footage which can be transmitted to a higher center immediately. This is how things can be changed. This is just an example. Next. Similarly, having a good hospital management information system, and again, because this is another agency or another group that has started off, where heart rate sensors, blood pressure testers, ECG monitors, everything can be, all the data can be transmitted, and it can be used for decision making. Next. This is just an example of a artificial intelligence based personalized emotional wellness platform designed for schools. You can just go through their website, Must Life, where you will understand how without any physical interaction the app or the website can help children in looking after their mental wellness or mental well-being. Okay, next. So finally, what are the challenges? The challenges are immense because health is a very complex thing, both public health and hospital setting. And it's easier to look at the hospital setting, but in India we need these kinds of initiatives in public health so that the masses are benefited. Cost, yes, initial cost may be high, but maintenance cost may be less. So as things go along, the cost will definitely cut down, be cut down. So IoT and M2M has the potential of transforming the healthcare industry. Okay, next. Now, any queries or suggestions? But like it is said that I think we will take the queries after about half an hour or so. So please note down your queries, and then we can have a discussion if you have some suggestions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation, sir. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Zainal Sharpiwala, co-founder and CTO, Tricog Health, to present on standards-based deployment of applications in health. Dr. Zainal is a co-founder and the CTO at Tricog Health. He's been building systems, creating and managing teams, and developing software for over 20 years. He is interested in the overlap of connected devices and machine intelligence to revolutionize and reinvent healthcare. He holds a master's degree from IIT Bombay and a PhD from UCLA. Before Tricog, Zainal was a research manager at IBM's India Research Lab. So the floor is yours now.
Hi, Sonia. Thank you so much. And thank you once again.
Yeah, presenter rights to Zainal, sir.
Yeah, rights have been given.
Okay. Thank you once more, DOT and TSDSI. It's wonderful webinar, and thank you so much for allowing me to share my perspective on this. My view on IoT and M2M, I'm going to talk about one specific application that I've been involved in personally over the last about 8 years as part of a startup that we created in 2015, and a few ideas and a few sort of the roadmap to where we believe some of this can really help in applications on health. So this is the topic of my slide and of my deck, and it's about how we've been using technologies and especially communications technologies to help doctors save more lives. I'll talk about various aspects here. The first thing that I want to talk about is what we do as a company in Tricog Health, and the problem itself, and what are some of the things that have worked in terms of the solutions and some of the things that haven't worked as well, and then what we can do more from as a technology group, as a group of policymakers also. And one of the interesting things about telecommunications, especially in India, is it's one of the pieces of infrastructure that has actually really revolutionized where we are today as a country. And I want to just shed some light on how we've been using that sort of infrastructure in order to help patients in their care pathways. So the problem that we are focusing on is cardiovascular disease. It's a well-known large problem in the world. Almost 18 million people die from it every year. 85% of these are due to heart attacks, and it contributes to 32% of deaths globally. This is, of course, a very large global problem. Now, when I appeared on the scene, I joined hands with my partner and co-founder, who is a cardiologist, an interventional cardiologist by profession. And he introduced this problem to me as one of delayed and missed diagnosis. And he shared some interesting insight about how cardiovascular diseases are diagnosed and then treated. And one of the fundamentals is that the simplest test for cardiovascular disease is what is called an ECG or an electrocardiogram, and some of the speakers have already talked about ECGs as one of the elements that are used in M2M and other applications. But one of the main observation from my co-founder is that it takes a cardiologist or an expert with enough exposure in the electrocardiogram space to actually make a comprehensive and an accurate diagnosis. And this leads to a fair number of problems. One of those problems is of reduced mortality or reduced probability of survival. And there was a study done in 2007 which tracked about 20,000 patients from 80 centers from 50 towns and cities in urban India. And they found that the time from the onset of a heart attack to getting the treatment is over 6 hours in India. And this is also true for other parts of the world. But at this rate, there's only a 20% rate of survival. And so the challenge that he sort of gave us as technologists was, how do you improve this so that you can improve the probability of survival? So when we started this journey off, we did actually 3 things, and we called it the Insta ECG solution. And it's a very simple sort of concept, if you may, and it has 3 pieces in it. The first is that we need to get good quality raw ECG data. And instead of going down the path of building our own ECG machines and going down that path, we actually went down the path of creating devices that we call the Tricog communicator, and it plugs into a ready-made off-the-shelf ECG machine. So this is the one that is shown. This is made by GE Healthcare, and the Tricog communicator is this piece of equipment, which is an IoT accessory essentially, which extracts the raw ECG data compresses it, encrypts it, and pushes it to our cloud. The second thing that we did was that we knew that we could use a bunch of algorithms to actually annotate and come up with diagnosis ourselves and interpretation. But these diagnoses, these interpretations would not be perfect. So the third thing that we did was that we created our own team of medical professionals, our own doctor team. And these are doctors that work almost like a virtual hospital. They come in shifts. We have a 24/7 service, and they are reviewing this ECG data constantly and creating a final report from it. So the workflow is sort of like this. A patient comes into an ECG center that has one of our machines. The center doctor will hook up the patient, and an ECG is taken and it goes to the TriCog cloud and system, where a TriCog doctor will review this data and send back an interpretation. Now, this is sent back over our app, over an email, and even a text message. One additional thing that happens is that because we are looking at these ECGs constantly, we can also raise an alarm if it turns out that this ECG is what we call critical, which means that it needs urgent attention. And what happens then is that a phone call is made to two places, one to the center itself where the ECG came from, and the other is to a coordinator at hospital who would then alert their teams, a cath lab team, a cardiologist, and even maybe send an ambulance to pick up the patient. And they'll coordinate this entire workflow for that patient so that they get immediate treatment. The trick is that we have to do all this very, very quickly. And we've been able to manage doing this in under 5 to 10 minutes. So that's how the system at TriCog has worked. Now, in the process of doing so, we actually created a fair number of different IoT devices, mostly for ECG machines. And over time, we've actually been able to integrate pretty much any machine out there that has a digital interface. We also went down the path of building our own machine for better user experience and sort of vertical stack integration. Now, all of this actually has worked pretty well. It's been about 7-8 years that we've been doing this, and this is a picture of the map of the country. We've got over 4,500 clinics, labs, hospitals, nursing homes who use our services, and that constitutes about 25,000 doctors in our network. We've been able to diagnose over 9 million patients in this time. We are at a rate of about a million patients are being added to our system every quarter now, and we've diagnosed over 400,000 heart attacks until now. Now, this is the good side of the story. Now, the sort of the hitch to all of this was that if you look at the map, of course, we've got a little bit of a gap in the center of the country, and that's mostly related to our field presence and field force. But if you see, we've got presence in a lot of the remote areas of the country. And while we would have assumed that communications is available everywhere, and that's what we tend to believe, it turns out that it's not actually all that true. In fact, on the ECG side, the requirements for the data gathering is in fact not that large. But this is a picture on the right hand side of the cell signal quality from our own modems on our IoT devices, taken from about 1,000 devices over about a year. And what you can see is that communications in these areas is still quite patchy. Now, this is on the GPRS side. In fact, in the last few years, the LTE side has become much better. The speeds are far better. But on the flip side, it's a more expensive and a higher power modem to actually use in an IoT device. And there are some engineering challenges associated with that. The point is that I think we are still, while we do the best we can to get the data out to us, and in fact, I've shown this as a map of India, but we have presence in a few other countries in Southeast Asia and Africa as well, 12 countries in total. And we've got data from each one of these countries, and India is actually not too bad compared to some of these. But when we look at applications in the road ahead, I think we'll face challenges if we don't build the networks and the operations to be able to manage some of these higher end health applications, especially. So, for example, one of the Professor Harish talked about Holters, and one of the standard things that is happening now is collecting physiological data on a continuous basis through patches or sensors that can be attached to the body. Watches are already happening, and watches usually transport the data back through your phone network. There are some of these that have built-in Wi-Fi, some of them that have built-in Bluetooth, and some have even tried built-in GSM. Now, many of these applications will require that sensor data to be continuously gathered. In this case, it's a low bandwidth requirement. Latency might be okay, but low latency is great for having urgent care. If there's a fall, for example, or there's an urgent situation in one of the sensor signals, that's the only way to manage that from a health perspective, is to have low latency. However, as we go further within other applications, for example, the tele-ICU application is one where you need a lot more throughput coming from the sensors. And tele-ICUs do not just happen in a hospital setting. We've seen tele-ICUs being set up at homes, set up in old age homes, for example, in apartments, in even ambulances. So we are talking about these sort of settings now in mobile environments as well, where a lot more data needs to be pumped into the system. As a final application, I wanted to show something that's it's very cool that I saw from a company called Butterfly Networks. They have an ultrasound device which can be connected to a phone, and one of the interesting applications that they have is what they call teletraining or remote training, where the ultrasound data in high quality is sent over the phone network along with the video feed of where the probe is positioned to a remote doctor who can help them take a better image of the ultrasound. In this case, you're sending high quality ultrasound, which is moving images, and sometimes these moving images are at higher frame rates than just video. And then you've got, of course, video feeds back and forth, and you've got audio as well. So these are some of the applications that I think we should all possibly work on together and consider when we are looking at new infrastructure development on the IoT space. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Here are my coordinates. My name is Zainul, and I'm part of FICOL. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presentation. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Vishnu MS, co-founder and CEO, Eve Labs Technologies Private Limited, to present on innovative solutions in health. Mr. Vishnu MS is the CEO and co-founder of Eve Labs, a medtech working on IoT solutions to improve safety and efficiency in hospitals. A user experience designer by profession, Mr. Vishnu comes with 8 years of experience in design and development of IoT medical devices with expertise in embedded design, mechanical design, software engineering, and usability engineering. He has been awarded patent for his product Tripo and have received various awards as a designer. Mr. Vishnu, the floor is yours now.
So thank you TSDSI for giving us this opportunity. Shall I get the share screen right?
Asif requests you to please give the presenter rights to Mr. Vishnu.
I hope everyone can see my screen now. Hello? Yep. So just to give a context, I'm Vishnu, CM co-founder of Eve Labs. We are a company working on IV infusion monitoring space, we have a product called Drippo, which is basically looking at optimizing infusion therapy in hospitals. It's an IoT device which we started developing way back in 2016. We've gone through stages of iterations, usability studies, as well as validations, so that we have started getting this product to market now. I thank TSDSI and DOT for giving me this opportunity to present this product to the audience. So I'll start with a problem that actually we are trying to solve in this place. Many of us are very much used to an IV therapy in a hospital. It's one of the most common procedures that you see in the hospital when you get there. I mean, most of the infusions and most of the medications in an IP scenario is given through IV, because and as it's very common. And most of these infusions are also given using gravity method itself, because our hospitals can't afford to have more infusion pumps. And most of these infusion rates have around 40% error, which is compromising patient safety. There was another study which was done in UK, which says like 1 out of 5 infusions which are done over there compromises patient safety because of errors in terms of the flow rate and associated functional issues with IV therapy. So coming back again to IV therapy specifically, there are problems related to backtracking of fluid. There can be extravasations when you're getting an IV. There can be patient interference, which leads to rate fluctuation, which again leads to mortality or an adverse event. So these kind of issues are very common with IV therapy, which in turn leads to bad patient experience as well as compromising their safety in hospitals. And as you all know, infusion pumps are there in hospitals, mostly used in ICUs, but they're not always the best option for our scenario, because you need a lot of infrastructure for these devices to be used. Again, nurses needs to be trained, and there is also additional implementation and maintenance cost which comes along with infusion pumps. You'll have to calibrate it more often. So these are some of the problems we face when we start using infusion pumps, or try to scale it up within an organization, say from a hospital's perspective. So our product Drippo primarily is a very simple device which acts as an intelligent bystander for IV therapy. What it does is it monitors IV drips and alerts critical flow rate and send critical flow rate parameters back to the nursing station. We have a patent granted in India, and we've applied for patents in Europe as well as US. So this device detects each drops and then sends the flow rate data. If there is any variation in the flow rate, say it can be due to a backtracking, it can be due to an extravasation, or those kind of issues within the IV drip, it sends an alert to the nurse saying that, hey, there is an error in the flow in this line, so that she can correct it at the right point of time. All these data, which is generated from the device, comes back to our centralized nursing station software, which is cloud connected, which helps the nurses to monitor status of all infusions and helps them to automate the documentation procedure, which is there along with IV therapy. Like we have done a study in a hospital, we've seen like nurses spend almost like 33% of their time in documenting their activities within the hospital. Most of these activities are related to medication administrations as well, and this also takes up a lot of their time, which in turn reduces the quality nursing time that they can spend with the patients. So this quality nursing time can in turn be improved when these kind of data which they need to log can be automated through IoT or M2M devices. So that's where our device, specifically working on IV therapy, can help nurses to reduce their workload in logging the data and getting the data of infusions in a correct manner. And as we have mentioned, like a lot of other speakers have also mentioned, that we are in the path to build smart hospitals. The hospitals, like in our experience, it becomes smart when they can actually get the data from different practices within the hospital, and they can analyze this data and move forward, basically like a continuous improvement. So that's what we are trying to do with Drippo. We help hospitals to bring safety and good patient experience in IV therapy through digital transformation. Basically, we help the hospital to visualize the error that is there in their IV therapy procedures and help them to correct it so that they have a more accurate procedure which is done within the hospital. So it comes with the device, the hardware device, as well as the software, which is cloud connected, and the analysis behind the data. I mean, what we do as an analysis on the data to give feedback to hospitals saying that this is hey, this is the error that you had in the last month, and we'll be able to correct it through these ways. So, and talking about the ROI that the hospitals will be receiving, say if they have to set up an infrastructure using an infusion pump, using a hospital for a 100-bed hospital, it would take almost like 4 lakh rupees to have a capital investment itself, whereas it's 1/4 for Dripo in terms of capital investment. And cost saving on adverse events and cost saving on additional disposables, which are currently used to improve accuracy, can also be there, because I mean there are accessories which are used to improve accuracy in giving infusion. So those accessories, the number of usage of those accessories can also be reduced, which in turn reduces the cost of healthcare. And adverse events in another space where we can tackle these adverse events in advance so that we'll be able to reduce the average length of stay of the patients within the hospital. So this was a case study which we did with our product and using a standard protocol in the hospital. So we have seen like on the graph which you see below, that is a normal procedure which was done in the hospital. So you can see the blue line over there. So usually when you prescribe an IV, it's like doctors prescribe a specific flow rate. So you can see there the prescribed flow rate is shown in the red line, which is around like 100 ml per hour, but the actual flow rate which is set was around 175. Like you can see in the below graph in the blue line. So it was wrongly set at around 175. Since there was no means to actually visualize it, so there was no means to visualize it, these errors were not visualized, and it can lead to increase in length of stay also. So once we started implementing Dripo in hospital, like hospital was able to visualize the errors in IV therapy, and they were able to correct it further. So if you see the top, the graph on the top, you can see the base rate which is prescribed by the doctor is 75, and the nurse is being able to maintain the flow rate by setting the flow rate properly as well as monitoring it over time. So this is the difference that an IoT connected device or like Dripo can bring in a hospital setting, like helping them to visualize their practice and aiding them in improving these practices over time. So some of the benefits that the solution can bring in is obviously one of the benefits is infusion safety. Like as the device helps nurses to set the flow rate accurately, it helps nurses to have a correct flow rate setting in the IV therapy, and documentation becomes more compliant because you don't have to spend much time on documenting these data because that automatically gets documented. And affordability wise, in a country like India, you can't look at having like an infusion pump for every bed. Like for a clinic, it's not affordable to have an infusion pump for every bed. So that's where the relevance of simple products comes in, and simple and portable products comes in, which can be used in any space without an infrastructure requirement. Say in case of COVID also, infrastructure requirement is one of the basic things when you're giving healthcare. Right? So there, even for devices, if the infrastructure requirements are higher, it's very hard to use. So we need portable, simple, battery operated devices which can be used in most of the scenarios, which can help aid nurses as well as our healthcare workers to give and do their procedures in an effective manner. And obviously, I started this company when I had a bad experience with IV therapy way back in 2014. I started exploring this domain that time. So as a result of all these things, I'm pretty sure that it will improve patient experience in hospitals, and by helping nurses to have identify when an IV line needs extension. So that's all about us, like whatever work we have done. I'll be open to any question that you have. So any questions on the device, or any questions on the hurdles that we have faced, or any other part of the device.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to invite Dr. Tappritesh Sethi, Associate Professor, CB, IIIT Delhi, to present on digital health semantic interoperability. Dr. Tappritesh Sethi is an Associate Professor in the Department of Computational Biology and the founding head of Center of Excellence in Healthcare at IIIT Delhi. His area of expertise is computational medicine, and he has built artificial intelligence solutions for ICUs, COVID-19, and antibiotic resistance. Dr. Sethi received his MBBS from Government Medical College, Amritsar, and PhD from CSIR Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology, New Delhi, India. He has been a visiting faculty at Stanford University for 2 years. He is a fellow of the DBT Welcome India Alliance and the Kavli Foundation of National Academy of Sciences, USA. Dr. Sethi published more than 40 articles in international journals and is a TEDx speaker, has delivered several keynote addresses at international venues, and serves as an academic editor for PLOS One, Nature Scientific Reports, PeerJ, and Journal of Genetics. Dr. Sethi, the floor is yours now.
Thank you. May I just ask if you're able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Asif would request if you can give the presenter rights to Dr. Sethi.
Sure.
Yeah, rights have been given, sir.
Just a second. I think it's asking me to open the system preferences. So let me just allow that. Can you present on my behalf, Sonia, Dr. Sonia, if you have the presentation? I think I'll have to reopen.
Sure. We'll present, sir. We'll present. Okay. Just a second.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I would first of all thank the DOT and TSDSI for this opportunity to discuss what we have been doing at IIIT Delhi. And today I'll be speaking about a very small portion of it, which is semantic interoperability and why we think it is important. Although this session is on IoT and M2M, going forward, we believe that this is a key challenge that we will, as a community, have to address to really create solutions that will create a digital health change in India and globally. So I'll be talking about some of the aspects of semantic interoperability in the space. All of us know that digital health is the new norm. This was something that I used to talk about, giving evidence about why it is needed before COVID-19. After COVID-19, everybody knows that where we stand and what is the importance of digital health, the importance of platform, the initiatives by the governments, and essentially the successful initiative of the government about tackling COVID has all pointed us to the direction that there will be more and more use of digital health at all levels: primary health, tertiary health, home-based care, and all of that. And devices are a part of this ecosystem. I think there's this report by PricewaterhouseCoopers in 2018 actually said that we already see some form of, about 59% of users across India use some form of digital health for their medical needs. This number is expected to be much higher now, which also lays the onus of creating standards and semantic interoperability. We really have to safely transition our healthcare systems to the digital landscape. Next slide, please. Why semantic interoperability? If you look at what is expected down the line, is devices integrated to create personal health records in a manner where we will see integration of different types of data, heterogeneous. So medical data are the most heterogeneous sets of data that I think at least we are aware of. in the digital space, you can have phenotypic features, demographics, family history, lab tests coming from various devices. Then there is drugs prescribed, surveys that are done at the demographic levels, genetics and machines that spit out genomic data sets and genetic data sets, etc. There is data sets from wearables, IoT devices, biomonitoring, etc., and so on, right? And so now if we put these all together, there is a huge need and a challenge of integrating these data sets. That's where my lab works on. Although I don't work directly only on IoT space, I'll present some examples. But what we work on is integrating these data sets to really create meaning for policy decisions or for patient decisions. And that's where we are headed towards with IoT M2M as well going forward. Next slide, please. So these are some of the standards that currently exist. Many of us are aware of these standards. These standards are beyond the standards that are imposed at the syntactic level or layers of interoperability. There are standards with HL7 and with FHIR, which enable data syntax to be preserved, but there's also ontologies that also help us preserve meaning. But is that enough? In my later slides, I will actually argue that even these ontologies and standards are not enough, even when we are trying to communicate meaning of data set. Although there is things like SNOMED CT, we all know about SNOMED CT. Then there is human phenotype ontologies that can communicate meaning about phenotypes. About medications, there is Campbell and Drug Bank and RxNorm. About drug reactions and adverse events, there's ontologies and so on. But what I will try to reason is in the real world scenarios, we still find ourselves at loss, even when we use these ontologies and dictionaries to transmit meaning across data sets, which is a challenge. Next slide, please. Here is an example. So what I'm trying to say here is that when the systems have to emerge, they have to actually take into account data sets in the real world settings as they are produced, in the formats that they are produced. They may be structured, they may be unstructured, they may be semi-structured. So having layers of interoperability which create these mappers is what I'm going to be really focusing on. And that's where I think is the thrust of semantic interoperability research is moving towards now, that creating mappers that use AI for creating better mappings, not just try to fit our data to mappings which are hard-coded, but also learn using AI-based approaches how to create these mappings. Next slide, please. So I'll give some examples of our work, which we have been doing with AIMS, New Delhi, in the Department of Pediatrics. So this project is called the Safe ICU Project, Sepsis Advanced Forecasting Engine. Why this project is very close to my heart is because, as you would know, that in Indian settings, having integrated data sets, we can create data lakes, but integrated data sets is a challenge. But over the last 5 years actually, we have been able to create a data resource with more than 2 million patient hours of continuously monitored data from babies and children admitted to the pediatric ICU. And these data sets include different kinds of data sets such as lab investigations, vitals, time series, the images, and so on. Next slide, please. So we had to write our own layers of interoperability. This is an example of a HL7 mapper layer, which is not semantic interoperability, but syntactic. But with these integrated data sets, then basically we were able to develop some very simple dashboards, which then are helping clinicians to understand how is the oxygen saturation range in my ICU. Are the data quality really good enough to enable some decisions? How is the antibiotic usage and so on, right? So really no semantic interoperability yet, but I'll come to that later. Next slide, please. And these have helped us to combine layers such as here you can see time series data, heart rate, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, and so on to make models that are predictive for the future so that we can predict outcomes for these children, whether a baby is going into shock or sepsis or acute kidney injury and so on. Next slide, please. Now, layered upon the top of these data are other modalities. And that's where semantic interoperability also comes in. We are also working with imaging data sets. And we also inject domain understanding into our models, because when we are starting with smaller data sets, we can't really directly go to models that will require lakhs or millions of images. So we basically build features that come from domain understanding. Here is one example of a paper published along those lines, where we built in features that look at the thermal gradients across the body to predict shock, because we know that it is second year medical school understanding that when a child is going into shock or when a patient is going into shock, doctors check whether hands and feet are colder than the central part of the body. Now, our models essentially take these into account to really make predictions, and those improve the accuracies of our models by quite a bit. Next slide, please. So our models also, we've tested these across different ICUs, cardiac, cardiothoracic, surgical, medical surgical, about 200 ICUs, mostly around the US settings. And we show that our models generalize so that we are able to actually have features which are semantically interoperable. Because if a model just performs at AIMS and fails at different ICUs, that model cannot be taken out of the AIM setting and cannot perform. So that is key. Semantic interoperability is key to find features that will generalize, help AI models generalize across different settings. So this was across 200 ICUs, adult ICUs and pediatric ICUs across US settings, and you can see that our accuracies are preserved. Next slide, please. So how do we achieve this, right? So I've said that semantic interoperability is important. So one of the things that we are trying to do, and has been working for us for many of these approaches, is to directly work with data themselves to build mappers that make this possible. And using AI, especially models which are called transformer models in this regard, has been particularly helpful in this regard. So transformer models are the models which are state-of-the-art architectures in language models. And language models, for example, when we're typing something in Google, it comes up with the next word prediction, or Gmail comes up with the next word prediction, and so on. At the back end, there's some form of a transformer model like GPT-3 or BERT, which does that task. So we are doing the same approach for clinical data sets to be able to really preserve the meaning of data when we build features and then build AI models. So here is an example in the ICU settings where we use transformers to BERT and DocBERT to really embed semantic meaning from history of patients to build these predictions. Next slide, please. The other example that I'm going to use is about public health. So this was the hospital settings, and there's also the use of semantic interoperability in the IoT space when we take our models in the public health settings. Now, this is a framework that I was a part of in the World Economic Forum activity on building something called the oncology data model, where the goal was to build a data model for cancer and how should these data be structured, which is both syntactically and semantically interoperable across different registries or sites in India, right? So different layers, specialized oncology, generalized oncology, care provider at a broader level registry. So we have to take into account these concepts that can really help the models perform across different sites. And the oncology data model, and I've given the link at the bottom, proposed the use of AI architectures and the frameworks that I've just spoken about in the previous slide. But I'll go forward and present some more concrete examples. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So a more concrete example is from our integrated federated health platform, which is focused on COVID. This was a project supported by the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office. And this platform was built to enable solutions that can gather insights, enable exchange of data, also in exchange of insights across different data sets. We call it tendering data sets. How do we bring different data sets that have been put out by different hospitals, different research organizations, research labs to create common meaning across these data sets, which is another way of saying semantic interoperability. Next slide, please. And with these, we have built models that have been published in peer-reviewed journals, and some of these AI solutions are like strain flow, evidence flow, and vaccine, which make use of artificial intelligence to give policy insights about strain emergence, evidence emerging from literature, and also how to guide vaccine distribution across the country. Next slide, please. And at the core of these AI models is something which we call COVID-19 Data Commons Toolkit. And that's exactly what I was talking about as tendering data sets. Next slide, please. So in this tendering data sets approach, what we are saying is that there is more than 5,000 data sets which are out there. For example, our strain flow model predicts the surge by looking at the strains that are emerging. It has performed for all 4 waves. Can you go back to the previous slide? Previous slide, please, not the summary slide. So the strain flow model basically made use of heterogeneous data sets that made use of surges along with the genomic data sets. And how did we do that? So the semantic interoperability models that I talked about, the transformer models, as you can see in the slide here, each point here is a data set. And we build models in 4 different layers. This technology, we're putting out the paper, and also we are submitting a patent about this, which allows us to actually combine different data sets together in manners which allow semantic interoperability to find AI solutions. And essentially what we find here is that our strain flow model, for example, allowed us to build models that combined 3 different data sources to predict case surges across 17 different countries, and all 4 surges across India were clearly predicted. But there are challenges. When we talk about semantic interoperability, we are finding that on the pie charts, you can see that it is still a big challenge. Although we say that these data sets are fair data sets, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, there is a lot to be desired in this space, because there's lots of data sets which are unmapped. Even after our 4 layers of mapping, a lot of data sets get discarded. And that's a challenge as well as an opportunity for the IoT M2M space, that when we are actually thinking about solutions that are systems wide, there's still a lot to be desired in terms of standards to be built, which enable semantic interoperability. But as a first level, we have built these mapping layers at the 4 levels, which allowed us to build some AI solutions that have actually performed for policy insights. To summarize, next slide, please. I'll end my talk by saying that that medical data sets are very heterogeneous. We need to preserve. Next slide, please. The summary slide, which is my last slide. The heterogeneity of medical data and machines and kinds of data sets that are spit out by different devices needs to be combined together to create the global picture of a patient or a hospital or a unit that has to, or even a person at home who's basically using some wearable devices. And that needs to be done by building some approaches which basically take semantic interoperability to enable plug and play approaches, which are still not existing. We need to evolve standards which are built around these intermediate processing layers, the intermediate middleware, which essentially allow these machine data to be converted or processed into layers which can then basically be talking to each other and still preserve meaning, and also the need to create sandboxes and real-world testing environments. Our federated health platform is one such example for COVID-19, but I think we need much bigger initiatives supported by initiatives such as TSDSI and DOT to create some sandboxes around digital health spaces to enable interoperable digital health data sets. So I'll stop there and I'll be happy to take questions. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. We would now like to open the floor to questions. So I would request Mr. Ajay Nain from DOT to please read out any questions that may have come from the audience. Ajay, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Just a minute. Okay. We have question for Dr. Sanjay Gupta from Mr. P.V. Prasad Rao. How a person can be saved by detecting early body symptoms of heart stroke without the notice of patient and give medication well in advance before actual stroke comes, which is a very frequent happening nowadays, and a lot of cases are failing under such scenario. Dr. Gupta, can you comment on the same?
ये तो बड़ा टेक्निकल क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया. This is nothing to do with IoT or M2M. This is basically, testing my medical clinical skills. But yes, whenever there is some cardiac event or some brain event, recognition of that is the most important thing, and asking for help. So, the thing is that first of all, we ignore. Most of you would have, heard of cases, including your, in your own circle, that ठीक नहीं लग रहा, घबराहट हो रही है, but we don't think in terms of a cardiac event. Similarly, some disorientation, थोड़ा सा पैर इनका ऐसा हो रहा है, we don't think in terms of a brain event. And then what happens is, once that time is lost, then the recovery or the, even the life becomes difficult. So this is a question, or, there are initiatives not related to IoT or M2M, but just for sharing you, or there is a national health portal that is also developed to educate the common people on some of the early warning signals, so that they are able to recognize any kind of event. It may be a cardiac event, brain event, it can be anything else, including cancer. Okay, we don't realize that things are not right. We only think that, theek hai, but it lost, the time is lost. So whenever there is, some sort of problem, you have to go through the early warning signals if you are able to recognize it, because the doctor will not be there. It will be the general public, the family members who have to take up. मतलब ब्रेन के लिए मैं इतना नहीं कहूंगा, बट कार्डियक इवेंट्स इट इज वेरी कॉमन. वो गैस हो रही है, दैट इज द बिगेस्ट प्रॉब्लम दैट वी हैव इन इंडिया, व्हिच मे बी एक्चुअली अ कार्डियक इवेंट. सो रिकॉग्निशन दैट इट मे बी समथिंग इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड इसीलिए वो गोल्डन आवर कहा जाता है कि 1 घंटे के अंदर अगर आप पहले तो बीच में तो हम हाफ आवर की बात करने लगे थे. तो जो मैंने बताया था एमरी, दिस इज बेसिकली टेक्नोलॉजी दैट यू आर एबल टू transport the patient to a facility, as soon as possible. So that is what I was talking. Okay. Chaliye.
Sir, on this, I would like to add that of course, the work must be going on, but with the advancement of nano sensors, in coming future, most probably we will be able to detect the symptoms, and will be able to see the reports beforehand on when such sensors are embedded in our body. This is a little far-fetched shot, but I think it will surely come in our generation in coming days.
Definitely, there are many developments happening. Recently, we had a big conference, international conference on mental health, and it was news to me that retinal changes, eye changes, are one of the first symptoms of a mental, disorder. Can you imagine? This is the type of thing that we are going in. And I was sharing that there are many, agencies or startups that have, given models. I will request dot people to, take those models and circulate to all the people. One is on ophthalmology, that is eye care, and retinal, this examination at the rural area through a remote device. these things can really change many of the things, including, your sensors or whatever. So there are many
Yes.
advancements that are there. Okay.
Sir, the next question is also addressed to you only. How IoT-based devices can change the healthcare facilities and how we can monitor the intelligence network in healthcare system, by Mr. Arjun Singh. I think we have answered this question, Arjunji.
Yeah, I think this is a very generalistic question, but yes, there are so many different mechanisms. I gave you this example of even this was the cold chain up. You are, improving your vaccine availability and its quality at the local level through technology. Similarly, I gave you the example of Mera Aspatal. Mera Aspatal is basically a feedback mechanism. So you get the immediate feedback from the patients that, okay, your reception is not proper, or the cleanliness is not proper, or behavior. So things can be improved. So technology can be used in many ways. Cleaning ke liye I gave you the example, robotic technology. So one of those presentations in the morning, told me that there is a robotic technology that can within 20 or 25 minutes make your things totally disinfected. So human or robotic, there is a difference definitely. So technology can play a role in improvement of the health facility, even the HMIS or the intelligence network, anything. So there are variety of ways in which technology or IoT can help. Okay.
Sir, to add on to this, are there any plans for any pilots in healthcare sector for IoT M2M based devices other
This
than these telemedicine devices?
No, telemedicine though it is there, but there are, that is why I'm asking that you please coordinate with your other team, which is working with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and
Yes.
take the presentations. There are number of presentations by the number of agencies where some models have been there. In the morning itself, we were discussing that we need to have a group made of the ministry and directorate people, and this similar group can be made at the state level also, where you can coordinate with the IT agencies, so that because they have the know-how, but they don't know what is your requirement for public health or your hospitals. So you can have a dialogue with them and say, this is our requirement, what can be the help that you can provide in the sense of development of some networking or some technology that will help. There, telemedicine is only one aspect. There are many other things that are there. So the whole purpose of this kind of exercises, including this webinar, is to educate people. In the beginning,
Yes.
I told all of you that I did not know what IoT meant or M2M meant. Okay, but yes, the usage is there. So as we go along, we need to, as health professional, think of our requirement, and as IT professional, think of the requirements of the health people, and see where technology can make a change in their whole setup. Okay, it can be small things, it can be big things, it can be individual based things, it can be population based things, or health facility based things. But there are multitude of ways in which technology can help in the health sector.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. We will surely coordinate with the other DOT team and will circulate the presentation shared. If there are any pilots being done in the healthcare sector using M2M, IoT, or even 5G technologies, we will get in touch with them and circulate these presentations with all the participants as well as speakers.
Good,
Thank
because
you.
there are pilots which are there. They may be at you, something is done in Kerala, something in Tamil Nadu, something in Gujarat. So you try to find out from those people where exactly, and then share the information with the participants. Okay.
Welcome, sir. Thank you, sir. Now the next question is to Messrs. Trico. What do you recommend for spotting the 3 innovative use cases for connectivity in areas that are remote from physical access for medicos as well as telecom sector? So
Could you just repeat the question one more time? I didn't understand the
yes,
first part of the question.
the question is, what do you recommend for supporting the 3 innovative use cases for connectivity in areas that are not physically accessible for telcos as well as medical professionals?
Oh, wow. Okay. If it's not physically accessible for telcos, now I think the whole purpose of this conversation and discussion is to understand how we can help the second part, as in when it's not physically accessible for the
Medical.
medical
Yes.
professionals. How can the telecom infrastructure help us? Now, I think the answer on the second part is through these applications. Were you adding something? Sorry.
Sir, please carry on.
May I interject? This is Bindu Srivastav, and this is my question.
Hi, Bindu.
And I think I was typing out this question, and I think I missed out 2-3 words.
Okay.
Basically, the question was around, how telecom technologies, digital technologies can help reach to patients in remote areas, like you mentioned, where medical professionals cannot reach, and in remote areas which do not yet have a good bandwidth, from a telecom connectivity point of view. So you had mentioned in your the 3 use cases, thin bandwidth, thin downlink, thin uplink, and basis your experience of the graphs that you were showing on the GPRS, etc. Are there any expectations, requirements that you might have from IoT M2M 5G technologies, which can help improve the implementation of the use cases that you are currently working on?
Perfect. Now I understand the question. Thank you, Bindu. So I think generally we always assume the telecom infrastructure as a data pipe, right? And I think what I wanted to just just talk about, and especially since we're talking about 5G, we're talking about applications. We talk about quality of service guarantees. We're talking about application specific QoS requirements. For example, when we look at some applications, they don't need this level of uplink as other applications. Some applications don't need that level of downlink. Now, in a lot of the technologies, or not lot of the ways that telecom operators, or in fact, the technologies have evolved, they have remained mostly asymmetric on the downlink side, because the applications that people were envisaging at that point were mostly consumption based applications, not creation based applications where you need a higher uplink. Now in health applications, what is happening is that you are creating at the source, if you may, this sensor data. So I think one of these things is something that I would like to highlight, is that uplink is actually a very big deal. And what we've seen is that having an asymmetric pipe where your uplink is like a 1 Mbps link, while or a 10 Mbps link, even when your downlink is as a 100 Mbps link, actually makes a very large difference to the health application. So I think that's one of the areas that I wanted to pinpoint. The other one is that many applications don't require that level of a fat pipe, but they require latency guarantees. So I would want a thin uplink, but I want that uplink to be reliable in terms of real-time guarantees on the transport. So can the technology itself allow me as an application writer to specify what kind of link I want and what kind of link I care about, but I don't really care about such a fat pipe, for example. So I think these were the 2 areas that I wanted to just highlight with that point.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zainul. Probably TSDSI will engage with you separately on these 2 very specific asks, especially the asymmetry and the should I say, latency, a real-time latency requirement in digital health, which is growing by leaps and bounds, and it's going to be a major consumer of going forward, 5G, IoT, M2M especially. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. General, we have another question for you from Mr. R.K. Nagaj. As we know that India is the diabetic capital of the world, and diabetes or higher sugar level are responsible for many critical disease. So, do we see any opportunity in IoT and M2M sector on how these can help in mitigating higher sugar levels or diabetes in general population? Are there some devices in place or under development so that we can figure out if our sugar levels are increasing or something like that?
Okay. I think it's a sort of an application level question, but I'll try to address it to the best I can. Now, diabetes, you're absolutely right that it's a very large problem. There are a number of devices actually out there, some of which connect via Bluetooth to phones, some of which have modems built in. I've seen some devices that have a GPRS or a GSM radio built in, where you can put in a strip and you can actually get information out of it. And then that all goes to the cloud, and your provider can see it, your hospital can see it, your endocrinologist or your physician can see that. So there's a bunch of actually innovative companies and startups, even in India, that do some of this, and in the world as well. Now, one of the aspects of your question was, do we see this proliferation, and how has this? So the good thing is that from a diabetes perspective, I think the sensor data requirements are very sparse, and they're very small. So they're usually just numbers that can be taken on a very infrequent basis, on a daily basis, or even much lesser on a weekly or even a monthly basis for in many applications. Of course, it depends. Type 1 diabetes people have usually continuous monitoring requirements. Type 2 is more infrequent. It really depends on the application. The good thing is that the requirements on the infrastructure for diabetes management is actually pretty low from the sensor side of things. From the clinical management side, of course, it depends on how the application is structured. I hope that answered the question somewhat.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Participants, if there are any other questions, please feel free to ask or type in the question box. Ma'am, I think there are no more questions. Can Sonia ma'am?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ajay, sir. Thank you, everyone. I would now like to request Manish, sir, from DOT to give the closing remarks for the webinar.
Thank you, Sonia. So we have come to the end of this very wonderful and very knowledgeable session on this IoT and M2M application in health sector. So right from the beginning, when the context was set by Professor Arzad Alam, till the end, we have seen how IoT M2M is transforming this whole healthcare ecosystem, not only in globally at the global level, but in India also. And we have also seen how this has led to significantly improved remote healthcare services, along with maximizing patient outreach and minimizing operational cost. The opportunities, potential, as well as the challenges of IoT and M2M technologies, which are in healthcare this healthcare ecosystem. We have always seen that the eminent speakers from various academia and government side, as well as industry side, they have very much highlighted with their experience of years of their research and the real field level applications of these IoT and M2M applications. So I also thank all the participants who have made this webinar very interactive with their questions. And I also thank TSDSI team, especially Bindu ma'am, Sonia ma'am, this Shefali ma'am, and Arif for their Asif for their for organizing this very informative and very well managed webinar. So, and before closing this webinar, formally closing this webinar, I request all the speakers to please switch on the cameras so that we can have a group photo before closing this webinar.
I request to enable all the cameras so we can take good photos.
Ajay, you can also switch on your camera. Bindu ma'am. If Sanjay sir is there, Sanjay Gupta sir.
My camera is not working, so
Okay.
I'll be the black dot in the photograph.
We are missing Professor Arzad, and I did not contribute at all in this conference. So maybe the TSDSI team, Sonia and Asif, if you could please switch on your cameras.
It would be better if this means this webinar theme could be seen on one screen. Is it possible?
No,
Sure.
sir.
Sure,
It
sir.
will be
1
shown
second.
completely 25 like screen. Okay.
Shifali, Sonia, please switch on your screens. You're the guys behind making these webinars, executing these webinars. Professor Arzad, we are missing him.
Somebody taking photo?
Is it fine? Can I take now? Or Sonia? I think Sonia is missing also.
Asif, my camera is not working. You can click the picture.
Okay. Yeah, I've taken 2-3 photographs.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all speakers and participants for joining and interacting. Kindly do provide your feedback on the webinar in a questionnaire that we will email to you shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
क्या डिस्कस करना था?